It's amazing how actually there's so little attention is given to what Putin says. But Putin is consistent in his thought, and if you listen to him, you know what he's going to do. And you know, but yeah, very very little attention is given to what he says in general. I guess, I wonder if it's just like we're so used to slimy politicians who just, um, make promises they know they're not going to keep, and, based on focus groups and, marketing of different kinds. And so we just assume that it's all phony. Maybe it's, we become so cynical because of our own politicians and we don't pay attention to them. But you can see, for example, people that really should be paying attention, like Kellogg, the appointed representative, the peace representative that's going to be sent to Moscow, I think, immediately after the inauguration. He seems to just believe what he sees on CNN or Fox News. The Russia and Trump does too. The Russian economy is in terrible shape. It's on the verge of collapse. The Russians are losing huge numbers of men. They're depending on the North Koreans and, all this nonsense.
Wait, so you think that people like General Kellogg, or what about Trump himself? Do you think these guys aren't actually even listening to Putin's speeches or the words that he says? They're just still getting all that information
It
from
certainly
Fox
appears
News and
to.
CNN?
I know it's incredible, but that seems to be the truth. Unless it's some sort of elaborate charade, and I don't think it is. Trump's not that kind of person, and
That seems,
I
but I mean, if you're a businessman, I mean, and you're going to want to negotiate a deal, surely you have to do your due diligence, right? Any
right.
type, that's just common sense. You have to, how do you, if you want to negotiate a peace settlement, you don't think that Trump or General Kellogg are even listening to what the other side is saying straight from Putin? The guy's telling you exactly
Yeah,
what he's
right.
saying, and you think they just don't hear
I
it?
don't see any signs of it. It's just like if you listen to them and you say these people are getting their news, from their information from Fox News, or if they are being advised, like if there's some sort of representative of the intelligence agencies that are giving them reports, this person's spinning it so that it conforms to the, the narrative that is adhered to on Fox News and other news sources, mainstream news sources.
I guess it's possible because when you're in that high level position, you're used to always being debriefed. You're like, I'm too
Right.
busy. There's too many things.
Right.
Somebody give it to me in a
Yeah,
condensed
they're not
form
going to
and
sit
feed
down
it.
and watch the press conference for 4 hours. They're just not going to do that. Yeah, and then you
They
kind of
should though, if they
yeah, well,
want
they
to
probably
deal.
should. This is the thing that I used to think that wow, like if I became president, I would learn all these secrets. I'd really know what's going on. I think that actually sometimes the president is one of the least informed people because he's the most powerful man in the country. Everybody wants to have his ear and wants to bend his will to their favorite policy, right? So he's kind of like right at the center of a big spin machine, and he's not hearing what the truth is. If he was really suspicious, he would make an effort to find somebody who's really honest with him, and he could do it. I think that there are honest people in the intelligence agencies, but they just generally don't rise to the top. They've learned, the people that run these agencies they're political animals, and they know it's important to just tell the boss what he wants to hear, and what fits with everything else that he's hearing. And if the only thing we could hope for is that Trump actually, explodes in rage when he finds out that, hey, you've been just lying. Get somebody in here who's going to tell me how it really is, and that could happen. But I just wouldn't put a whole lot of hope in that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Trump being in the middle of the spin machine, so it could be hard to kind of get real
Yeah,
information if
I think again
everybody's
that's
throwing things at you.
right. Again, I think that's really, maybe what the main benefit of the so-called negotiations or dialogue could be. Like you were saying yesterday, educational. It's just that they've been told, don't listen to, he's the Russian. The Russians say these things, but they don't mean it. They're on the verge of collapse. They're looking for an off ramp. and we'll start to apply some pressure, some carrots and sticks, and they'll do what we want. I think that's the way. It's clear that that's actually what Trump is thinking. Um, and then, and Kellogg seems to believe that very much himself. So he goes there and he's just thinking confidently, look, hey, yeah, we know you guys are in trouble. We'll give you an off ramp. You got to, concede this. And hey, we'll give you a little something here, maybe some sanctions relief. And they'll find out the Russians are just laugh in their face, and he'll go back to Trump, maybe try it again and finally realize, hey, maybe the Russians are really very serious about this. And I think maybe we got to begin to start, thinking about adjusting our policy. That's the best thing I think you can hope from the dialogue that hopefully will be established.
I can understand maybe somebody like Trump, who's not a military man, that's in the spin machine. Everybody's talking to him. Okay, I understand. But if Trump chooses General Kellogg as the special envoy, it's like, this is your job. Your mission
Right.
is to, communicate and start engaging diplomacy with the Russians and the Ukrainians. You think that General Kellogg, as a military man, first of all, he should know this to begin with. He's in the military. He's a general, right? And then he's been assigned this very, very important task. It's like he should be preparing for the test of his life. He should be
Right.
going over all of Putin's speeches, all of his
yeah.
notes, everything that's happened. That's his job. How is it that he is oblivious? It's like, oh, we're just going to roll in there and tell the Russians what's what. That's, to me, that's insane. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, it's also just grossly irresponsible, it seems to me. But all I offer as way of an explanation is that these generals, U.S. generals, tend to be very political animals, and they rise to the top because, again, they know they become part of the in crowd, and the in crowd, they all believe something, they all say something, and you don't go out from that, and they sort of learn, we find out what it is we're supposed to think by watching these news channels, because everybody's on that line, and if you deviate from that, that's Russian talking points. I know it's absurd. It's completely absurd, but that seems to be the way things are.
I mean, it's either that or they're playing some type of some type of game, because maybe they know if they are recognizing the Russia's point of view right now, that it would cause people to flip out in the establishment. So maybe they kind of have to move slowly, in tiny steps, because we have seen a few things good come out from both Trump and Kellogg. Kellogg did denounce the assassination of General Igor Kirillov in Moscow. Maybe he's thinking like, well, we can't go assassinating generals. I'm one of those.
Right. Actually, even other U.S. government officials, when asked about it, they didn't really go out of their way to condemn it, but they say, well, this is not something we really approve of. But they clearly are not going to pressure the Ukrainians. There's no sign of them doing that. But it's just, they know that this clearly violates the norms of war. And they also understand there could be repercussions. If you get in the habit of assassinating leaders of the other side, hey, at some point the other side might start saying, well, tit for tat. And they don't want that, obviously. So
Right.
It's in their interest to express some kind of disapproval. There's no question about it.
Right. So, at least we heard a little bit of that from General Kellogg, saying that, and then Trump said just these missile strikes were stupid.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit.
Right. I'm hopeful on that, because again, he actually, as I've said before, he has strong support within the Pentagon for his position. That's what the Pentagon clearly thought, and they fought it tooth and nail until finally, after Harris lost the election, Biden just threw caution to the winds and said, I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. I don't care what you guys say. And so there's no reason why he can't just end those. If he doesn't, then that's just I think all hope is lost, because that's something he clearly can do. He can end those strikes. He can do that, right? He can de-escalate immediately. But the negotiations, that's for various reasons. I think those are not going to, even if they were Kellogg really understood what was happening, and I don't believe that he does. I mean, he's just said too much. Sometimes you can see people kind of will play a game, where they don't quite go out and say something openly when being interviewed by the mainstream media, but you kind of sense that they're hinting at something. They're being purposely ambiguous about something. There's nothing like that. He apparently, I didn't see this, but I've heard that he just went on and on and on about the North Koreans, which is one of the dumbest things of all. So,
Really?
yeah, right. Um, so, yeah, but again, even if they really knew what was going on, the negotiations, I don't think can go anywhere. So my hope is just that, like we've said, it just could be educational. They could start to really understand that the Russians are serious, and maybe over time that'll lead to a reassessment of U.S. policy. But I don't think it'll be anything that we'll see. We won't see any results in the short term.
It's. I wonder how that will go if you really believe that North Koreans are there. You believe that Russia's been harmed incredibly, and they're about to collapse economically, and then you go to the negotiating. Your mind is just going to turn to jelly, right? I mean, like, well, what's going on? Like,
I don't know. Yeah, it's like you blow circuits.
Yeah,
smoke
that's
coming
why.
out of
That's
the
why.
ears.
That's why I do find it hard to believe that somebody like General Kellogg would be so unaware. But the fact that he said he was going on about North Koreans, it's just like
yeah.
It's playing a game, or they're just really ignorant.
I think they really believe it. I think they really do. And we've talked about this. It's just something that throughout the West, it's just ever since the unipolar moment, the West has really not been able to let go of that sense of invincibility, of superiority, and they haven't been able to let go of the idea of Russian feebleness and incompetence. And that was, for them, that was a great time. They could just kick the Russians while they were down, and they could do whatever they want. And the Russians might protest about something, but it didn't matter because they couldn't do anything. And it seems like they just can't let that go. That for whatever reason, that's they still inhabit that mental space. It's really bizarre, but
is it part of just being old? Yeah, you're stubborn. And, well, I'm thinking part of it is more actually just the fact that their formative years were all built when the USSR was there. The Soviet Union was that big rival. I think that just shaped so many people's lives.
But the thing is, actually, in those years, we had respect for the Russians, for the Soviet Union. We feared them, and so that's why we didn't cross the red lines, and that's why we negotiated these treaties, that really took us back from the edge of the abyss. And it's just not true anymore. I think it was Alexander Mercouris was hoping that because Kellogg is old, he's 80 years old,
really,
that he would remember the Soviet Union and he would have this natural respect or whatever. But I just don't, maybe that'll come back. Maybe you'll realize that, oh, okay, we are again dealing with a real adversary. But at present time, you just don't see it.